Welcome to the Rise of Women's Football podcast. I'm Alex Ibaceta, your host, and today we are joined by Andreea Koenig, Vice President of the Ligue Féminine of Football Professional. That sounds weird in English. De Football Professionnel.
Oui, Ligue Féminine de football
Un
professionnel.
peu de français, c'est pas mal. Originally from Romania.
Yeah.
Then you stepped into a career in finance and football. We'll get into everything, but thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Fresh from France today. We're here in London. Tell me, how do you describe your role day to day to someone who wants to know?
Oh my God.
And in the most basic way possible, even though it's impossible.
So basically, I'm trying to keep two plates in the air. One is the club, one is the league. So I'm trying to help as much as I can to develop women's football in France. So that's the common thing. And then I love seeing it at club level, because then at league level, I know exactly what the issues are that the clubs face on a day-to-day basis. So basically, I fight all day long. I fight for things. I fight against prejudices. I fight for getting more budget and more people at the and this and that. So, and I try to open doors.
Try it. Successfully so far. How long have you been in this role?
So at the league for a year and a few months, and at the club for 5 months.
Okay.
So it's relatively new.
So obviously in France, we were talking about it before, but it has a rich history of women's football, but it still needs to grow sustainably in the long term. You know, there were peaks. The 2019 Women's World Cup was a big peak in women's football there, but then it's kind of died down since then. How has that been for you coming into this role and trying to find something that can stick in the long term?
Right. So in a way, I was lucky, because people tell me, oh, you have so much energy and you do this and that. And like, yeah, because I didn't get any doors yet closing in my face, like maybe as they had done in the past. I think what happens is in 2019 was a fantastic year for French women's football. But I think the federation itself was not maybe structured enough to allow the development of women's football the way it has happened since last year, when the league became fully professional. So, and then the COVID hit as well. So it was like a double whammy. So now all the stars are aligned for the French women's football to develop. But it's true, in terms of structuring, we are probably where WSL was in 2017-18. So we are just basically became a separate, or let's say a professional league, but we are still part of the French Football Federation. We don't have, a personality, like a low personality, or we are not independent by any means.
Not yet. We'll see where the future goes. But let's go back to the beginning before we get on to what the future holds for France women's football. You said you lived in England for, was it 20 years?
Yeah.
And you saw kind of, the beginnings of women's football. England is kind of a top tier, professionally run women's football league and country. Tell me about this 20 years in England, and then after that, we'll go back to your Romanian roots.
So the reason I lived here, I used to work, I had a different life before. I used to work in finance. I used to work in investment banking. And basically, well, I always loved sport and football particularly. But then the whole love was reignited when I became a mother myself. So my son basically wanted to watch a football game, and we went together. Because I'm married to a French, he chose Arsenal, because Arsenal is the Frenchest of the English teams, or it was back then with Arsène Wenger. And then I fell in love with the whole package, the Arsène, the club, the class of the club. And obviously I saw the women's football developing there. And this is why I believe so strongly, because it's not like we are talking unicorns, things that no one ever saw. Actually, I saw it being developed here. So that's why I believe, because I know it can be possible. So Arsenal for me is my little gold standard, because I look up to them in terms of stadium attendance, the way that they run it as a one club, even if they have women's section and the men's section. But the way they run it, the way they their commercial, their activity, their media, and I try at club level at least to replicate what I can of what I saw them doing.
And finance to football was a big jump, sort of say, or at least very different worlds of what it is day to day. How did you balance the beginning of your football focus to the end of the investment?
So at the beginning, I did both actually. So basically, I was still working in finance, but I was intellectually interested in the financial side of football because I hadn't realized that since I first looked carefully at football, which is when I was young, it had become a massive business. So as a banker, you're like, wow, this now is a serious business worth billions of dollars. So I first basically got into football through the financial angle. So I have been a board member of Excellence since 2019. And the idea was to understand from the inside how does a club work. And actually, as a banker, there's many levels at which a bank can work with a football club. So that was what interested me. And then actually, I became so crazy about it. Then basically one day I realized that I would spend all my Mondays literally talking about football because we were commenting what happened over the weekend. So I knew everyone who was supporting who. So I was tease the Spurs guys because they lose all the time. And, so then I like, wow, actually, this is what I care the most. And life's too short. I want to do something that I'm passionate about. So, so then I made the big switch, which is obviously a lot of stars, again, were aligned. We wanted to go back to live in Paris. And I was financially secure enough to be able to take a risk of starting from zero. I think intellectually it's fantastic. It's learning a new language. So I feel young again because you start again from
Freshness,
starting something new. And I learn all the time and I love learning. And I was telling someone earlier on, if I knew 5 months ago what I know now, I would have done that mistake and that mistake. I love learning, even if it's sometimes from mistakes.
Yeah, no, I mean, you learn from your mistakes. At the end, that's what it is. You're from Romania originally. How did you ever see yourself, growing up in Romania and being there? Did you ever think of being in this world in any way possible?
Not at all. No, I mean, honestly, I'm an only child my father loved football, and that's why I got into football. So basically, there weren't many things to do in Romania under the communist regime. There were 2 hours of TV a day, but we could watch all the sports competition. No. 2 hours. It was 2 hours of communist propaganda. But when there was like Olympic Games or something, they would broadcast it. But more importantly, I live close to the Russian border, and the Russians used to broadcast the World Cup. So my first, and also. There's another angle of it which basically resonates a lot. For me, football is about community. I used to live in what we call here a high rise. And whenever there was a football game, like people would gather at someone's place and, we share food, a bit of wine. Well, not me as a kid, but the parents, we watch together, we are happy together, we are sad together. So for me, always football was also linked to my life in the community. And then when I moved here, I realized why I like so much to go to the stadium. I love it because I find a community, and I'm an immigrant. I'm an immigrant in England, I'm an immigrant in France. But when I go to a stadium and there's 50,000 people of my family, basically, and it's the one place where it doesn't matter literally where you're from, what color of the skin you have, what accent do you have. When your club scores a goal and everyone hugs everyone, like all the barriers disappears. And this is something that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
So when I grew up and my father used to take me at football games or watch football, like now I look back and like, God, I wish he was alive. I would take him to all the games. We'd have so much fun because we would only talk about football. When I was a kid, my mother said, you and your dad, you would kill me because she didn't understand what we were talking about. So that's a regret I have, that he's not alive to see me doing what I'm doing and come to the games with me.
To be able to talk about that football. But now you get to talk about it in a way that you're projecting your voice, further than what is, a little room with your vecinos, with your neighbors around you. Now you're a big voice, a key voice in the future of basically a league in a country where I think there's a lot of room to progress as well.
Yeah,
and I think you're quite key for that.
Oh, thank you. I'll try.
I think you're doing well. I think you could say so far so good. I want to ask you, going back to France, kind of putting your priorities. You've explained there what football means to you, what you want to show, what you want to exploit. But then you have the business side of you that, you want to put those two together and progress women's football in France like that. what are your core priorities in your job?
Right. So basically, what drives me is a comment that I heard again and again, and which bothers me a lot, which says there is no economic model in women's football. Women's football in France has no future. This and that. So why I wake up every morning is to prove these people wrong. It really is like, you don't know what you're talking about. So basically, it's all about economics in the end. It's true.
Yeah.
So in what people don't understand is, whenever they compare men's football with women's football, like women's football is such a young sport, because in France, as it was in England, as it was in Italy, this sport was forbidden by authorities. So in France, during the Second World War, the government had decided that football is not a sport that's fit for women, and it hadn't been officialized back till 1970. So in 1970, when Pelé was winning the World Cup, the French women had barely the right to organize themselves and play football. So it's a young industry, so you cannot look at it and compare it with the men who had it uninterrupted for 130 years. So I think so my priorities, and the priority at club and at league level is to make it more and more sustainable, and we understand that you need to invest first. It's like a startup. The results don't come from year one or year two, but you have to invest smartly and to have a plan. And after we thought a lot, so basically you can create a very virtuous circle by starting with stadium attendance. You drive people to the stadium, then the sponsors take note, and then then you have a very good strategy on social media, because these days that can help you leverage a lot your investment. So we are very obsessed with stadium attendance at league level and at club level, and trying to attract. There are many ways to look at it. It can be financial, but one of it is educational. I think, for example, in my club, we decided that the under 16 have free tickets, so they can come. And then I think, if a little boy comes to watch girls playing football, maybe the next day when he goes to school, and then they play football at halftime, at halftime. That's
in recess.
Yeah, in recess, maybe he's gonna be all right by if a little girl wants to join, they will be like, yeah, fine. So it's a societal project as well, right? But so we need to attract as many people to the stadium, but you need to offer them an experience that makes it worthwhile for them. Because, like someone said once famously, marketing can bring people to stadium once, but it's the fun experience who brings them again. So now we are trying, we have working groups to see, we share best practices. Literally, we are like sponges. We try to see what works, either in French football. We had a seminar last week with Bayern Munich, who told us how they managed to attract 57,000 people crowd to Allianz Arena when at the beginning of their season. We have a basketball team next week telling us how they managed to fill the. We are literally trying to learn from the best practices on how can we offer the best experience possible to fans, so they come to the stadium. So then you have then you can see sponsors and commercial partners, and you have something to offer, right? You have, and it's proven already that the people who watch women's football are on average younger and more female than for men's football. So you have a segment that's very marketable in a way.
Yeah, there's a lot of. It is true. At the end, it's the sustainability. It's not just one match, coming in 60,000. Great, but how do you get those people back? Every single match.
Correct.
Not just the big matches.
Yeah, because it's easy.
Well.
Exactly, it's easy to bring them. You open the big stadium, you put fireworks. Well, they all come. But will they come in the tiny stadium when it's raining outside and it's 10 degrees?
The commitment. I want to see you commit to this. It is true. And obviously, what happens in women's football a lot is there's the big teams that compete in the Champions League, that win Champions Leagues. And there's the smaller teams that don't have the same resources, that don't have the same visibility, especially on an international level. How is it for you balancing, obviously, the PSGs, the Lyons are going to give you a visibility that's maybe Strasbourg or Rams isn't going to give you necessarily. How do you balance that from your point of view?
Yeah, so from a sporting point of view, competitivity is very important, right? You cannot, I mean, even if it's not just a French problem, because in most leagues you have one or two teams that literally win the title every year. But in France, what we do, for example, which I'm not sure that's done elsewhere, everything that we give to clubs, it's equally split between clubs. It's not that we give more to the first and less to the last. Secondly, we install the playoffs, so you add a bit of more jeopardy to the race for the title, because as we all saw again and again, anything can happen in a game, right? Even the big favorite, and then we tried literally everything we give, be it, cash or now, for example, data. So we offered all the clubs in the first and second division a system that basically records every game and spits out all the football related data. So that's something that's quite expensive, and the smaller clubs could never afford it, right? So if you give them that, you give them the same arsenal in a way as the big clubs can hire a whole room of data analysts and buy the raw data. So we try that, but then the funny thing is, what I like about women's football is that you don't always need a lot of money to make things happen. For example, the top 2 attendances this season come from 2 small clubs, my club and Nantes. Even if we don't have the means, Paris Saint-Germain, but we put a lot of effort in getting these big games, and as far, for example, for my club, because I saw the finances, and it's also a profitable experience. So now we are doing it again in 2 weeks' time against Saint-Etienne. Saint-Etienne, so it's not PSG, it's not Olympique Lyonnais, but I'm opening the big stadium. We expect, I hope at least 10,000 like the last game. So, you don't, if you have enough people who work and you put 100% of your time in it, you can have big results even if you don't have maybe the same budget to start with. It's easier when you have lots of money. But there's, for example, we're talking about, activations. The biggest line always before the game is for something that's free for any club, which is autographs of the injured players. It costs nothing. You just ask them to sit there and to sign autographs. And the kids love it. You don't have to be a rich club to do it. Any club can do that.
Being creative and being effective. Essentially,
exactly.
It's the effectiveness of everything. Now I'm going to ask you a money question. If you had 10 million euros, where would you invest it in? And why?
At club or league level? Both.
We'll have 5 million each.
Yeah. No, I would invest in human resources. So I think we are under-resourced, and especially when it comes to communications and marketing. So I would invest it there, because that's what you can use to generate more money, more investment. So because there's a lot of things that come, for example, I would have thought infrastructure, but the regulation of our league make that the clubs already need to perform in a specific type of stadium that's, in first division, you can only play on grass. On the academy level, also you can invest there, but, 5 million is a lot of money for many years for an academy. But I think right now what we need the most is the human resources dedicated 100% to women's football, be it at club or league level. So I would invest there to start with.
To have the beginning of everything. So let's dive into kind of growth into the future and not only the present. Where do you see, you kind of spoke about it, I think I have a feeling what you're going to answer. Where do you see the biggest growth coming in the next 3 or 5 years in the league and at club level?
So that's going to be commercial, because I think it's very sold and underutilized. And, I think in France for a long time, women's football was like some sort of ESG project. So you give some money, you expect no return and like whatever. So now, people start understanding that the more people are involved in it and the more people are watching it, you actually can hit a target that's very hard. If you're an announcer, for example, right? So I was always giving the example of Miele sponsoring the Euros this summer. It's true that women's football, there are more women on average, even if on majority it's still men. There are more women that watch women's football than that watch men's football. Or 3/4, let's say 60% of the household decisions are made by women. So if you are a brand, you can advertise to a higher percentage of possible buyers than you do at a men's game. So, but we need to attract, and same thing for the young people, right? Because the people who advertise on linear media, they're like, oh, but no one watches TV anymore. And like, yeah, but they watch our TikToks, they watch our Insta. So this is where you find this generation that the advertiser would kill for, right? So this is what you can sell. And also you see, like, I think also some people, they always, they are not used to selling women's football. They sell because they sell what we have now, which is not a lot, right? Like if you compare whatever, the Instagram following or whatever. But you should sell the dynamic, because this thing is exploding every year. It's growing in 50, 100, 200%. So, and the women's football is here to stay. Anyone with a pair of eyes, we're discussing in the park next to my house. Now there's lots of little girls playing football. That wasn't used to be the case 5 years ago. This thing is here. It is to stay. It would only grow. So if you're smart, you invest now when it's still early.
Yeah, definitely. You see, particularly I think Lyon and PSG, obviously they're academies, but you see Lyon in particular, they've made a lot of academy players. They stayed or they left. But everyone, that's in women's football. It's hard to see academy players really flourishing in top tier. But now there's a lot of international players coming into France, quite a lot more and more. You see it now that the league is completely professionalized, and it's a different kind of marketing and commercializing, especially on the international level. I wanted to ask, what's the most successful experiment that you've done to try to commercialize your fan engagement, or if there's anything that you're like, let's try this, and it worked out amazingly?
I think that's it's already the effort we started making last year in sharing the best practice and in growing our stadium attendance. Sorry, like sometimes. So basically, for example, in the top 10 attendances ever in French women football, 5 happened last season.
Okay.
And already in last season we had 4 games with more than 10,000 people. This season we're already only like a third through. We already had 3 games with more than 10,000. So for me, what I define as success a bit is the fact that we enclench this like positive dynamic in bringing people to the stadium and on a consistent. So the average grew by 50% last year. Now we target another 50% increase this year. And it all happened because we all work together, which is another thing which I love about women football. The clubs, they really work together because they all realize it's in the common interest to have all the bloats rising at the same time.
I was going to ask you that, the kind of, how is it to structure an entire league? Again, the resources of each club is different. The level of, not professionalism, but the level of elite players is very different. The demands, I would say, of each club is different. And for you to kind of instill something, for some clubs it might be too much, for some clubs it might be too little. How do you balance the expectations, I think, overall?
Yeah, so basically the way it works in France, in order to get a grant from the federation or from the league, in this case, you have to have a certain minima in terms of staffing, be it medical, admin, sporting, So basically, there were, before I even joined the league, working groups who determined what is the minimum, but it's a minimum, but that's enough for a professional player to be fully taken care of. How many physios do you need? Do you need a nutritionist, or do you need this and that? So basically, all these conditions are in the license, and if you fulfill all of them, you get the grant. It's all or nothing. It's not like 80% or 90%. So this minimum for us is, this is what a professional player is expected to face when they enter the French league. So they have to play on grass, so basically on the highest possible level of pitch. The staff has to have that many people, that goalkeeper, coach, and that number of doctors, that number of physiotherapists, So And we are very mindful as well not to put the bar too high too fast. Because, as I said, we also look what happened. Like, for example, in the English league, you had clubs who said, "Oh, we cannot follow, the request." And especially with what's happening in the French men's football at the moment, which is very challenging, we cannot ask too much too fast, right? But I think the levels that we have already as a minimum, they're already high enough for a professional player to feel like they're fully considered as a professional athlete in this country.
Yeah, little by little increasing that. Obviously, the bar will be rising season after season, changing. But it is true, little by little, you can't go too much. If not, it would be just, one season could potentially go well, but then second season, as you said, clubs might not be able to do that again.
Right. So what we did, for example, this year, we said, okay, that's the minimum, but then there are clubs who do better than the minimum. So then we created a system of labels. So if you get that label, you get extra money because it means you invested more we determined 4 areas that we really care, like, player coaching and marketing and fan experience. So for the clubs who do better, then we give them a bit more money. So then you have, we have a minimum, the base is the stick, that's the license, and then you have the carrot, which is the,
a little bit of an incentive.
It's an incentive based. So that's how and then if all the clubs get the label, it means we can integrate it in the license, and then you can raise the level,
That's again the structure of having it future, just not yet. But it's there to kind of create incentive to begin with, to be better, and also a minimum, but in a very slow, constructive
we all do it at our speed, right? So we're very mindful not to to ask too much too fast from clubs that are quite stretched economically from the whole context of the French football.
And focusing on you in such a big position, such an important position, dealing with women's football on one hand, but at the same with a federation, with a country that's not necessarily the most opening to women's football entirely. As any country, I think everyone's had the struggle of working in women's football, periods. But on top of that, being a woman, asking for money, working in a world where you have to ask for money, essentially, which isn't easiest. How has that experience been for you?
Again, because I'm kind of new to it, and because I didn't experience rejection and hardship for a lot of time, I'm still fresh, and I also choose to look at the things that work, and a lot of things are working. And I don't think necessarily there's a big barrier for women's football, but I think maybe it wasn't, people didn't know about many things. For example, when I tell people that the women's football was literally unofficial or forbidden in France for 30 years, people are like, really? Like, it's your country, you should know that. There is a lot of education to be done. And I think also, the generations are changing, and people are getting more used to the idea that, like, little girls can play football or do any sports. There's a horrible statistic in France, which is half of the teenage girls, they stop doing any sport whatsoever when they reach puberty, because very often it's a lack of infrastructure, changing rooms and all this and all that. So people are now, they are more than happy to encourage young girls to do any sport, and football, it happens to be the most popular sport. So I think there's a lot of working together from many standpoints, health, like even public health, educational, you create a better society when people accept, so I don't find, it is hard, but it's not impossible. Or at least.
How would you encourage someone else wanting to come into this role after you in a new world, in a new society, essentially? And how would you encourage someone to come in who you would want to take your role in when you leave?
With open arms, because I think we always need to pull the people with us, and then I would love to have lots of mini me, everywhere.
Yeah.
And you also have to prepare for the future, like in any company or whatsoever. So I'm always sometimes I have like a half a day a week where I mentor students, or and I'm always happy to talk about what I do, and I try to even if I don't like when the spotlight is really on me, because I don't think I done too much so far, but as long as I can talk about women's football and I can show a woman can do it, because a lot of people think, football is just for men. And like, no, there's not a single job that cannot be done by a woman in football. Not one. But we need to be more visible. Right? So if I will talk about women's football till blue in the face wherever I can, because people need to see you can have someone running a league, you can have someone running a club, you can have a coach that's a woman, you can have a sporting director that's a woman, a scout that's a woman. There's no job that cannot be done by a woman, and we need to publicize and to maybe shed more light, like media light, on the women who do these jobs in football.
As we are today with you, exactly that. I wanted to ask you, has there been a failure important to you that has made you kind of realize I need to do more, or I need to do more of this and I'm not doing enough? Not in a negative way, but has there been a failure that's shaped you positively to be able to keep going?
Well, there's lots of failures, but you can choose not to get beaten up. Like now, for example, like, is it a failure that on a sport, from a sporting standpoint, my club at the moment is the last in the first division, right? Is it a failure? Is it my failure? Is it, maybe we didn't do the mercato right? Maybe, like, I'm trying to, you learn from everything, I think. So maybe today it looks like a failure, and maybe 4 months from now you say, okay, but I learned a lot from that. So I don't know, maybe I have selective memory, or maybe today's failure again in 4 months is going to be, I remember that time when we were last in the league.
And now you grew from it and you progressed from it. And I think probably that's the last question around that is, where do you want to see, it's a very cliche, but it's an important question, I think, your top 3 goals of what you want to do for the league and for your club in the next 3-5 years. What's kind of the key things that you want to see really progress?
So I want to see full stadiums. I want to see a lot more commercial partnerships and a lot more partnership and support for women's football. And I want to see more equity in the way that the money that's going into sport is directed towards women's football.
Okay. I think that would easy peasy in the world of football. But we'll leave it with that. Andrea, that was brilliant. I really wish we could do more, because I think you have a lot to say and a lot of passion for what you do, and I think the progression is going to be really, really good. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having
does better, and in a few months
they will
say, remember that time. But no, thank you for your time, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me, Alex. Thank you.